So welcome to your weekly reminder that only dead fish go with the flow. Today we have slightly different, not an athlete, but sports commentator and broadcaster, Katie Smith. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I wish I was an athlete. Like, I did try. I was just so average at everything. It was like, I'm going to have to talk about it instead. Sad times.
It's so fun. You know, I'm now retired, and this does seem to be the better side of it. A lot less sweaty.
It is mostly less sweaty. I'd say there's some places where I've been and I'm like, I can't believe I'm not getting a medal at the end of this. This is appalling.
I've got a sports bra on in what's the word? In sympathy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Could you I've got a few notes on what you do, but you seem to have fingers in many different pies. So I've got broadcasting, I've got commentating, Olympics, Paralympics, Women's World Cup, co-host of another podcast, Podium Athletics podcast, and also part of Not by the Playbook, which is BBC 5 Live.
That one's BBC World Service, actually.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. I when you said fingers in many pies, I've literally been having a phone call this morning with someone where they were like, have you thought about like maybe cutting down a little bit of what you do? Just like, I know you love a bit of everything, but there will come a time where like you do have to pick and choose. And I've always said, I think my strength is my versatility. So I love talking for a living, obviously, and I love sport. I love commentating on it, presenting, reporting. I sort of do a bit of a amalgamation of both, of all of them, really. But I think even when you cover loads of things, as fun as it is, it can get a bit overwhelming to try and follow so many different sports to the level that you need to then be able to talk with any sort of authority. So I would say in my kind of long-term plan over the next year is probably to give myself a bit of time off and shave down the number of things I do. But I do love it. Like, you know, you must feel this doing a podcast. I love just conversations with interesting people. I think that is the absolute best part of the job. And I think in sport, that's where you find so many fascinating people.
Absolutely. I mean, I love yapping. So this is just
I think we're going to get on well.
Yeah, exactly. Tangents, waffling, yapping, whatever it is. So you've got all of these different things in many pies. Could you sort of explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a freelance broadcaster, so I used to primarily work for the BBC. I was a staff member there, but in the last year I've gone freelance, which means that I have a bit more ownership over who I work for, where I work, how I work, that sort of thing. So essentially I get hired by different broadcasters and platforms and sporting bodies to commentate and bring sport to life. So how did I start? I started more in the production side of things. So started quite young at the BBC as they call them a broadcast assistant. So you're basically the person helping write some of the scripts and cutting clips that might get used on the radio and writing briefs for guests and things like that. But I always knew I wanted to be on air, I think, partly for the yapping and also partly because, I don't know, for me, like bringing sport to life is just the greatest privilege in my job. And particularly I do most of my stuff on radio, so I think you're painting the pictures for people who aren't there and can't see it, and you're bringing every element of it to life. So it's not just about enhancing a picture, it's about like telling the entire story. So I always knew I wanted to do that, so sort of worked my way up through doing like sports news bulletins and voicing up things and shadowing people and doing reporting at football games. So, you know, on Saturday afternoon, if you turn the radio on and they're like, oh, there's been a goal at Wigan, Katie's there. And I go, Wigan 1, Preston 0, that kind of thing. So I do a lot of that. And then through that, I think, realised that I had quite a skill for those descriptions and keeping up with the action and like painting those pictures that I was talking about. So I always thought I'd really like commentary, but I wanted to have a go. And as much as I love football, I wasn't that bothered about doing football commentary per se. I wanted to do some of those sports that really mattered to me, and particularly growing up completely obsessed with the Olympics. Like that was my passion. And I rode when I was younger to no level, I promise. Put my hands up now. I think Nat School's gold was like my highlight, obviously. But my dad rowed. I grew up on the tideways, so sort of like had that in my bones a bit. So when the opportunity came up that they needed a new rowing commentator at the BBC, I was like, pick me, pick me, pick me.
Pick me, I want to go.
I can do this, I promise. And yeah, sort of worked my way up, I guess, through like doing like always saying yes to stuff, trying out loads of different sports, even those ones that maybe I didn't know that much about when I started. I was like, right, I'm going to do my research. I know my stuff. I know I can do this. Yeah, and it's kind of gone from there. And now I do a bit more presenting as well. So I've just come back from the Women's Euros where England went back to back. Oh yeah, watch the Lionesses, everyone. And that was amazing as well, as a slightly different experience, because it was all about not the commentary, but about presenting the coverage. So like, how do you tell those stories? Who are we going to speak to about it? How are we going to bring the best out of everyone you're working with? So yeah, I love all aspects. I feel really lucky that I get so much like variety in what I do as well.
Yeah, it's really amazing. When I was writing my notes before we sort of went online to talk, I was thinking about the commentary, and doing a podcast, I feel like it gives you a bit more time to sort of think and you can follow the conversation. And I was thinking about doing a commentary. I'm like, how would you get the words out fast enough? How are you? Because it's a lot of thinking on your feet. Like, I would imagine you have bullet points or stories, as you were saying, that you're going to cover. But when you're covering like live stuff, like I know you were part of the commentary team that did the Paris Olympics, where GB won a lot of gold medals, bronze, silver, and it when you watch it back, it doesn't look like it happens that fast. But when you're in it, I don't know, I'd just be like, somebody, I think maybe somebody's ahead, and oh my God, they're ahead. No, they aren't. No, they're not.
Yeah, and I would say if you heard me like a couple of years ago, that is probably how it sounded. I try this next time you're in the car, just like out of interest. A little commentary game you can play is, if you're like on the motorway, you've got a couple of hours to kill, try and commentate on what's going on around you, because like you say, it's harder than you think, but when you get in a flow state with it, it's quite good. So say you're in the middle lane, you might be like, Peugeot's coming up on the outside, is he going to overtake? Yes, he does. Oh, he nips back in, but look at the Volvo coming around the outside. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And you sort of get into a game. It passes the time really well. Don't let anyone hear you though, because that sounds absolutely awful. But I think you're right. Like, it is, you don't get much time. And the biggest thing with live sport, and the beauty of it, but the terrifying thing, is that you do not know what's going to happen. You can have every expectation. The form books could tell you that absolutely, there is only going to be one outcome, but it doesn't work like that. So you have to be prepared, not only for all outcomes, but to just be nimble enough to go with what's happening, go with the flow, but not like a dead fish,
But not like a dead fish. Very good.
Yeah, and it's I think it's like the jeopardy of that is what really excites me, because I remember the goosebumps I got about to do my first ever Olympic final in Paris, and they throw to us, the commentary team. I was with Mo Spihi, former Olympic champion in the 4, and we just looked at each other and we kind of gave each other a nod, like, here we go. But it was that acknowledgement that you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in the next 5-6 minutes. And it's the thrill of knowing if you nail it, that is how everyone will remember that moment, because of how you can bring that to life for people. And I think sometimes I get a bit overwhelmed. You have to try not to think of it in those terms, I think. But sometimes you can get a bit overwhelmed thinking, well, those athletes, and so many of them, like they're, your friends. And I quite often think like it's quite a responsibility to call their moment, because of course they know it as the race and how they think about it. But any replays of it, whether it's the BBC commentary or it's the TNT commentary or the World Rowing commentary, like that's how that moment is captured and remembered. And so you want to do it justice as well. So that's when I think all your prep comes in, making sure you know all those key details about everyone in the boat. And particularly for us at the BBC, when we're doing a sort of British perspective on it, I go into a lot more detail on the British crews than I would say for the international crews that they're rowing against. But you've got to yeah, you've got to have your eyes on everything. The other fun thing with rowing is you can't really see most of the race with your eyes until final 200 meters. So you're commentating off a screen as well. And in Paris, it was super sunny conditions, so it's really hard to see the screen. So there's all of those things. Sorry, I'm probably rambling away, but like that's kind of, I think, the excitement of it. It's just you just don't know what's going to happen. And you can write all the lines down in the world that you want, that moment that they cross the line as the Olympic champions. Of course, every commentator thinks about what they're going to say, and I write myself little notes, but you can't guarantee that that's what's going to happen. So if they don't, what's the storyline there? What is the moment coming across the line? So, yeah, the excitement and the terror.
I guess your voice is going to be the backing track to their medal,
Yeah,
or what. So whenever they go to watch it back, your voice will be there. Hopefully,
I
it'll
know.
be
Happy
like
memories.
reassuring voice, but it is there. That sounds like the best moments, if you like.
Mm.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you would maybe think are the not so good moments or the not so good perks of the job?
Yeah, I think it's from a very like my social life is completely non-existent kind of way. It's pretty much all weekend focused sport. Like generally, football's pretty much always at the week. Actually, football's every day now, isn't it? So that's by the by. But all the big events happen around weekends or holidays. Summertime. So it's it can be really unsociable. I think as fun as it probably can look when you're posting pictures being somewhere cool, like you don't really see your family very much. I barely see my boyfriend at all. There's also the thing with sport and with social media is that you do get criticism because it's a subjective industry, and everyone can have an opinion, but sometimes opinions stray into derogatory comments about you, about your appearance, about your voice, things like that. But also they can stray into wanting to tag you in things and let you know personally that they don't like what you do. And I think you do have to have quite a thick skin with stuff like that. Again, I feel relatively lucky that I've not experienced too much of that. And it's probably a reflection of, I think, where I am in my career and also doing radio. It's not quite that profile of doing, on-screen TV presentation where I think for some reason people feel like they can comment on anything about that person because they've sort of opened themselves up to being criticized by just being on screen and doing their job. So I think that side can be a bit demoralizing, even when it's not happening to you. I think when you just see those conversations swirling on social media, and I would say football is absolutely the worst for that, with people like Joey Barton spreading such hateful comments about women pundits not being able to comment on the game and women's football being completely useless, all of those things. And that's hard to see. I would then counter that by saying, having worked at the recent Women's Euros with England doing so well and having these superstars come out of the back like Chloe Kelly, like Lucy Bronze, Hannah Hampton, where I just had a chat with a male friend yesterday. He's like, Chloe Kelly's just cool, isn't she? Like, she's just legit cool. And I was like, yes, she is. And I'm so glad you're saying that.
Well done.
Thank you
We're
for
getting there.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of bits about Hannah Hampton on social media that she actually had eye surgery as a child.
Yeah.
And she's our goalkeeper. I just think that is absolutely amazing. I mean, rowers typically, I'll hold my hand up, we struggle with hand-eye coordination, hence why we're doing sitting down sport. Like, we're not the most coordinated, but to have sort of had that as a background, we're talking about these amazing background stories, to have that as a feature or part of her life, a part of her tale, and then she's in this position where eyesight's quite important.
Well, you'd think so with goalkeeping for sure.
Sure. And I just it blows my mind that some people can't just respect each other. I wouldn't search out football. I search out the Lionesses football, but before it was readily available, I can't say that I would search it out. Or definitely not the men's game. It's not been on my radar, and now it is a lot more on my radar, and there are all these incredible stories. And and the lack of respect that sort of comes with it sometimes is so disappointing.
Yeah, and it's just that really odd tribalism and kind of like macho behavior of thinking that because you support a certain club, you behave a certain way and you have an immediate intrinsic hatred of other people that aren't there. And again, this kind of comes with the caveat of like in normal life, I think 99.9% of football fans are really cool, ordinary, normal people. But it's in those spaces that seem to become a free zone to act and think and say whatever you want. I think of it like that film. What's that film? The one where one night a year all like rules go out the window and
Oh
they
my God,
can just go and kill anyone.
is it a purge?
The Purge. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's what it's called. Yeah. And I sometimes think football can be a little bit like that, where once you're inside that stadium, you can not be the person you are in everyday life and you can yell abuse out and you can just be really angry and aggressive. And like, I notice it with people I know where it's like, my God, you would never yell like that in normal life, but you do it here. And I think that's exclusive to men's football. I find the women's football space is so refreshing and friendly and welcoming. And I really love going to men's football. I cover it, and I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing men's football, because I really think a lot of people are normal. But I do think it's this weird space where they get into and they just like all rules go out the window, and you don't get that in women's football. And I would say if anyone listens to this and is like, oh, I'd quite like to give women's football a try, the atmosphere is just so brilliant. You can take your kids, take family members who are a bit nervous. It's just wholesome and lovely, but also still has those like aggy chants in there, and they still get angry with the ref, all those things, but it's done in a way that I think is just really inclusive for everyone. And it's just, if you want to try football in a different way, I'd give it a go.
100%. Going back to what you sort of said about your own personal experiences in this space where you're kind of putting yourself out there quite a lot, and you're sort of, you said you weren't necessarily like being hit particularly hard by it, but they're like all of that critique, and is there an expectation for you to be like not present more male, to sound in a certain way? Like, are people like difficult because you're not a bloke doing the presenting? Or
Yeah, I think there's that thing as a woman that you've got to work that little bit harder to earn respect. I don't think it's because of the role you are in naturally given to you in a way that it might be with a guy. I.e., if you were working with someone new and they turned up and they saw a guy there presenting the coverage, I don't think they would bat an eyelid. Whereas with a woman, there's almost that sense of, okay, you're a woman, so I just need to test you out and just like double check you know what you're talking about. I'm like, right, hold my drink, let's go. And again, I really think it's changing for the better. The industry is so much more like welcoming and inclusive. You just see how many women are working in men's sport now, and how many men want to work in women's sport as well, which I think is actually really encouraging and probably something we don't talk about that much. But I maybe it's slightly in my head as well, because even though it's getting better, I still feel as though I have to prove myself before I trust that the people I'm working with trust me, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's slightly that like imposter syndrome type thing. And again, not being a former athlete, because we're getting more and more former athletes or players coming into the space, which is brilliant, and they offer so much. But at the same time, I think they sometimes get that pass straight through of like, okay, no, we trust you because you've gone and proven it, haven't you, on the pitch or in the pool or on the lake or whatever. Whereas for someone who's come in just as a broadcaster, I do think sometimes you're like, I promise I know my stuff. Like, just, give me a chance. I'll show you.
Oh, it's so interesting, because one of the first episodes I did was with a friend, Harriet, who's in coaching. And we sort of shared a few stories where we'd gone to an event, or as individuals, like separately. We weren't, sat together the whole time, but we'd gone to an event as coaches of specific crews, and both of us had instances where the umpire had gone to shake the dad's hand of whoever's come to watch the race instead of the woman who's dressed as the coach, cosplaying as a coach. Or in my case, I was on the launch, ready to watch my crew race, and this lady turned to me and was like, "Which one's your sister?" or "Which one's your daughter?" I was like, "I'm not old enough to have an 18-year-old daughter."
Thank you very much.
But I do consider them all my children, so there is that as well.
No, and I've definitely had instances of that. Like, for example, sitting in a football press box recently, and an hour before kickoff, they come around and give you the team sheet, so the team news of who's playing. And one of the press officers came round and he handed the team sheet out to everyone sitting in our row, who also everyone else happened to be a male. And then he gets to the end of the row and looks at me and goes, "Oh, do you want one as well?" So, like, I was just there for fun. I just love watching, a random League One game on Saturday afternoon for no real reason in the press box. I was like, yeah, that would be great. Thank you. I would appreciate that.
You could have had such a like Elwood's moment there and just been like, "No, actually, I bought all my own notes," and like whipped out the massive folder.
Pink and sparkly, yeah. Yeah, and also I have, like, honestly, this happens pretty regularly. As you'll go and cover a game on a Saturday and get to the so you go and pick up your accreditation from like a little booth outside usually, and quite often I'll get there and they have my badge ready. They'll be like, "Oh, Katie," and I'm like, "I've not met you before. How did you know it was me?" And they go, "Oh, you're literally the only woman reporting on this game today." So it was fairly obvious. You're like, "Oh, okay, we need to still work a little bit, guys, on sorting this out, don't we?" And I just think it's so important to have more women in the space, and not just women, just diversity of all sorts, because I think people think about things differently. They talk about things differently. That's the biggest thing I've been learning recently, working more in women's football than men, or like getting such a sustained period in it over a tournament, is that actually I think conversations with women on football can sound quite different to men talking about football, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or bad that it's different. I think it's just different, and it's quite interesting to try and like analyze why that is. And I just think, it's a space for everyone.
It's becoming a different beast, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is your favourite sports commentate on?
I think it's probably tennis, because, you were talking earlier about like, how do you keep up with things and
Yeah.
know what to say. I think by far the hardest I've ever had to do is tennis, where if you imagine some of those serves like 150 kilometers an hour or something, and then, if a rally goes longer than sort of 5 or 6 shots, you are going ball by ball. And often, if you think about a tennis match, it can be such a slog. Like, it's not unusual that at a Grand Slam, if it's a 5-set match, it's 3 hours plus, and you're not commentating completely on your own at that point. You usually have a summariser next to you, and you switch commentators between sets so that you get a break, but you still have to watch the whole thing, obviously, because you can't not know what's going on. And I think to have that level of energy and focus, but for that longer period of time, for me is like, whoa, what a challenge. But also it's so rewarding when you hit a good point really well and you keep up with play, and then you call that massive moment. Oh, I love it when I get it right. And more often than not, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd, done that differently, or used a different word or whatever. But I think it's so hard. I think I love that in tennis, because it feels like there's so much like the mental aspect to tap into when you're doing your commentary as well. So yeah, I think I'd say tennis. Although I'm quite fickle. Like, whatever I'm working on at the moment, I'm like, oh, it's the best sport ever, isn't it?
What tends to happen is I'll record a podcast with somebody, and then I'll spend the next week talking about how great that person was.
Yeah, I do that.
Like, you will not believe what's going on in their world, and everyone's like, well, and now there's no point listening, so you've just been talking about it all day.
And then the next person comes in next week, you're like, oh my God, I just never thought about life the way they did, and now they're my new favourite person.
Literally, honestly, Lissy, the tennis player who I recorded with the other day, she was telling me about all the different terms that like tennis uses, and one of them was like juice.
Yeah.
That's the like the finish point.
Level points. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And the like it's definitely not called sudden death, but like there's sudden
a
death.
tie break.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sudden, basically the same thing. And she's also had terminology for like just in practice, if somebody was hooking you, they were basically cheating.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of bits. So I can imagine that's like so satisfying to get right because you're like, I'm in with the tennis people now.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it sounds really basic. And I wonder if some people might think that a commentator wouldn't do this. But I quite often, if I'm getting back into a sport for the first time in a while, I will do like a vocab list just to get my head back in gear. Because if you think, like you say, there's some words that are so specific to certain sports that you would never use in another sport. So I'll just write down any word that comes to my head. And then it's quite a nice way, I think, before a commentary to then like read through it and be like, oh, they drilled that forehand down the line. Like that's a nice adjective to use, or an inside out forehand, or a drop shot, or a smash, or a, I literally can't think of any other word in tennis. You know what I mean? A serve. It's out.
Driving up to the event, and instead of talking about the cars, like, oh, they're going around the outside, you're like trying to use tennis terminology.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, he's drop shotted him there. Don't know how that works. But yeah, and I do that, and I'll do it with, rowing as well, just to have that variety of language so that when it gets to crunch time, and like you were talking about earlier, when you have to completely rely on brain linking to mouth, that that is there ready for the taking. Because I think that's the biggest thing with commentary, is just making sure that your head is lined up so that everything you're thinking is coming out, but it's not being completely disrupted by what you're seeing as well. Because often you're like half a beat behind what is really happening as well when you're commentating. So it's about sort of being able to think and speak simultaneously, but not necessarily be thinking about what's happening with what you're saying. You're thinking about what you're going to say next, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Probably
that
doesn't.
makes sense. Well, so I can see what you're trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a specific sporting ick, or do you have an ick related to broadcasting and commentary?
I was thinking about this one. I feel like there must be a massive term. Like, I'm not a massive fan of people who just use loads of cliches in commentary. So with football, like, that was really a game of two halves. Like, do we have nothing, anything more creative? I'm also not a fan of massive superlatives when people commentate. So, when someone goes, that was absolutely incredible. It's like, was it though? Was it really, in the grand scheme of everything you've ever seen in your life, was that absolutely incredible? Or so, because I simplify. If I'm doing a commentary on rowing again, I do a scale of 1 to 10, and that's how big you can go in the commentary. So a 10 out of 10 commentary, that is Olympic final, and that's it. Like, that is the only 10 out of 10 commentary I think you can do. Then 9 out of 10 is like a world champs final, maybe a really close Olympic semi-final, and then you sort of work your way down that. So I think when you're using language like, that was unbelievable, that was incredible, I've never seen anything like it, like, realistically, you probably have, and you're probably going to see it in the next race tomorrow, aren't you? So should we all just calm down a little bit from that? So that does annoy me. And I would say my other sporting ick is probably when you're interviewing people, when they just give really stock, boring answers, like, we take it game by game, or like, trust the process. And I appreciate you athletes, like, you do actually talk like that, I think, and you do think in those terms. But I think sometimes they see the media as the enemy, or like an annoyance, just like that extra little distraction. But I think, like, we are your biggest tools, surely, to like get messages out there and sell your stories, and particularly in sports where they don't get the limelight constantly all year round. A lot of Olympic sports, they have to thrive in that patch of time every 4 years and get those big names out there.
They've got 2 weeks to be a star, and then everyone's we're not going to forget, but they will be on the back burner for the next 2 years.
Yeah, totally right. And so I think like use the media, like give us good answers, sell your stories, because then we're likely to want to come back to you in between as well. If you're that kind of person that is like really charismatic and engaging. And again, you know, not everyone is like that, but I don't like the people who don't try. That really annoys me. Like, just give me something, just
But
just a little
also,
bit.
but also, if it doesn't necessarily go 100% right, like whatever you're trying to deliver, like I think a good example of this is the O'Donovan brothers,
Mm,
Irish double, and after their Rio medal, or they did an interview, and it was just the best thing ever because they were just 100% themselves. Nothing was rehearsed, nothing was practiced, and their accents, the Irish accents, are so thick. It's difficult to sort of work out. On first watch you're like, what the hell's going on, and then second watch you're like, this is so fucking good.
yeah.
I saw them recently on a in an Instagram reel. They were doing an interview, and they're saying that people had like got part of their interview like tattooed on their arm, like some of the quotes.
I mean, yeah, it's iconic now, isn't it? That went viral because it like they were just so raw, and people were like, "Wow, this is genuinely." I've never heard athletes just talk like that and give you straight answers and just say what they are actually thinking and feeling. And again, there is a kind of point to this, like we were saying with the whole like selling yourself in the when you have the shop window open to you. But I do a lot of work with Hannah England, who's a former 1500-meter runner in athletics, former world silver medalist, and she does workshops with athletes where ahead of the workshop she goes and like you've been doing today, like goes and does her research on people via just purely on their social media channels, and then she presents it to them and says, this is the only things I know about you from your social media page, so if you want me to say anything different when I commentate on you next time, you have to give me that information. And I think some athletes feel as though because they have social media like a direct link to fans and family and supporters and friends now, that they can bypass the media. But what they sometimes forget is that we look at that and take inspiration from it, and you know, we like the little quirky things they post. You can still have a private life and not give too much away, but you can also choose to give a bit of yourself and present it, because chances are someone like me is going to be stalking your page the day before a race, and if there's some stuff you want there, like, give it, and then we'll feed it to the world.
That
Sounds like
is
a really weird little like dinner party.
that is so funny because that would be such a humbling experience for some people, like to have presented the only stuff that they put on social media. I think this is especially for the sporting blokes, where it's just like, this is what I won on Wednesday, this is where I came on Tuesday, and this is where I came on Thursday, and there's nothing personal about
Yeah.
any of it.
That's also the point, is some people love that super slick look on their social channels, which, yeah, like aesthetically great. But if you're only posting stuff that's super swanky that your sponsors have made you post, and nothing personal about maybe how you felt about that second place the other day when you wanted first, or when you were ill and you had to miss that race, like how devastating was that, or what was the greatest triumph that you've had so far in your career. If you don't give us any of that, then we can't give personal like touches in commentary and in reporting, because we don't, like, you don't share that information. So just want to keep an eye on, guys.
Just a thought, just a little
Just a
top
little
tip.
thought for the
Love it.
day.
What are we dying on the hill about?
So I feel like I've been thinking about this loads recently, and it's like, I feel like it's like quite a deep one, but like all about comparisons and not comparing yourself to other people. Because I think, I don't know about you, I get so carried away looking at what other people in my profession are doing, or what athletes are doing. And I, particularly recently when it's been 1 year on from Paris, I feel like it's such a obvious specific marker point for so many different people who work in sport to be like, okay, 1 year on, have I stepped on, have I fallen backwards from where I want to be, am I static, am I doing the things I want to be doing? And I find myself spiraling sometimes for honestly no obvious reason, thinking about what everyone else is doing, and am I keeping up, and do I need to be doing something different? And even on days where I'm so excited to have a day off, I'll start doom scrolling again. I'll be like, oh my God, right, no, you must send that email. I'm like, No, Katie, no one wants an email on a Sunday, really, do they? Like, no one's opening their inbox, I don't think, on a Sunday night. So maybe just pop it in drafts and send it on Monday morning. I just think it is. I think there's a quote in my gym that says, like up on the wall, that says, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And I just want to like die on the hill about you are enough as you are, and you are working so hard doing what you do, whether that is in media or sport or, you know, whatever job you work in, and the complete sort of unnecessary need to look elsewhere and bring yourself down when often, I don't know, do you find like social media is just so misleading anyway? You can think someone is having the best time, and then you meet up with them in person and they're having a right like mare of a week, and you've just built their narrative for them and said like your life's amazing, and then you realize it's not, and it just, none of it should matter, should it? You know, if you're happy.
I completely agree, and I think, you know, the last we started this call and you were like, "Oh, you've just got married. That must be amazing." I was like, "Yeah, no, it was amazing." And then I spent a week emptying my house into storage, and I've had to move out, and you know, that's all been really stressful. And you know, me and my now husband, Matt, he goes away on camp on Thursday, and then I'm basically gonna go and live with my mum and dad for a bit. So it's like everyone's like, "Oh my God, married life. I still got married on Instagram. It's gonna be amazing." I'm like, "Yeah, well, about to not see him until pretty much the end of September because they've got a training camp in Portugal, and then they're going to Shanghai for the World Championships." So married life's been a bit weird recently. But yeah, the like what you see on social media is such a double-edged sword, like you were saying. It's brilliant in terms of, you know, athletes being able to put out a story for themselves, or, you know, just individuals being able to put out all of these different stories. Like my mum's favorite thing to look at on social media is dinky ponies, and they're a group of Shetland ponies that go into hospitals and old people's homes and sort of bring joy in that way. And she'll spend hours looking at that. She's really guilty for it. She'll laugh listening to this, hopefully.
Aww.
But there's, you know, there's so many opportunities to put stories out there and information out there, but it does come with oh, I'll just have a look at this. And oh, as you said, you know, to look back a year and to think where you were and have you actually moved forward. And I would say the best sort of way maybe to combat that is, if you're really struggling, is to obviously seek psychological help at any crossroads where you might find that. But what I really liked to do as an athlete was, because I would struggle with this in terms of, you know, performances, is I would write down where I was at that point last year, and then where I was at this point in the year, and from a numbers point of view, see if I could work out how many weeks ahead I was. And yeah,
as in like what, like performance wise?
So it started with performance wise. So if I was doing, this is really boring rowing pieces.
I love it. Give it to me. Processes.
Yeah. So we always used to do a 30 at 20 on a Monday evening, and I would do the 30 at 20 and write down the score, you know, whenever we did it. And then I would write down the 30 at 20 from the date in, say, 2023. And then I would compare it to the 30 at 20 I did in 2024. And then if it was better, I could be like, "Oh, I'm 6 weeks ahead of last year already."
Yeah.
And the year's only just started. Or I'm 2 weeks ahead. Or if the score kept improving, then I could keep sort of saying, "Oh, I'm already ahead of where I was." And I sort of managed it myself that way. And then I'd also write down like a list of things. And I mean, I remember doing this really prominently when I was 21, and that's the year that I passed my driving test. So I got to be like, driving test, tick.
So you like to do it with like things outside of rowing as well?
100%. I would do it with, you know, obviously rowing was a really easy marker because there's a lot of data. But I would do it with things in my personal life as well. So my driving test, like being able to go and see family, or my academics at the time, or I'm trying to think of another one. Oh, I'm massively into sort of my arts and crafts, my textiles. So if I'd got like some projects completed, I could like put that in there as well. You know, a birthday. that you won't be ahead of the one the year before. I mean,
That would be
come
impressive.
early, but you still hit the marker.
Well done.
Um, and yeah, I'd used, yeah, I'm a big, I love putting pen to paper in terms of a training diary. And I would have a section at the back of my training diary where I would compare, but I would compare myself from the year before. And even if I was to do that now, I'm no longer an athlete, and sort of comparing being, was it a NARP, a non-athletic regular person, to being, an international standard athlete, that's a difficult comparison, but there's so many other elements in my life that are moving forward and progressing, and you know I could write in that list. So that would be
Did you
my.
did you ever find it hard though when, say, you hadn't made that progress, so you maybe weren't 6 weeks on, you were a couple of weeks back? If you then wrote that down, would that make it more damaging to you because it was then there brutally written on pen to paper that actually I'm not where I should be and I don't know what to do about it?
I think this is where the podcast is like swapping around.
Yeah.
I can see it in your
This is
eyes.
actually about you.
I think there were definitely times like that. Like, nobody breezes through life and they're 100% happy all the time. That's a unrealistic standard of social media, that you're happy all the time and everything's perfect. But that's where I found bringing the checklist of my personal life in really helpful, because even if chances are, if my athletic performances were behind, I was probably focusing a lot on my social life, and that was going really well, or my academics, which I'd never, put my hand up and say I'm a absolute blast in the academic world, but passing things well, I was good at that sometimes. So yeah, that's how I would, when I went to college, I went to Hartbury College in Gloucester and did sport, on a scholarship or a half scholarship, whatever it was. And one of the first things that was said to us is, you always have sort of three things in your life, especially at this teenage point. And one of them will be sport, one of them will be social, and one of them will be academics. And at no point will all three things be thriving. It'll only ever be two at a time, and one of them will take a bit of a hit. And that's okay, but you just got to decide which one is
Yeah.
going to take the hit at any one time. And at the time, I was a 16 to 18-year-old who was living away from home on effectively like a university campus. And, the social was right up there, and sport was right up there, and academics were in the bin. So I do, I believe that is part of it.
Yeah, no, that sounds so true. I'm now thinking back to when I was rowing, probably at my peak level, and probably when I sort of cared about it the most was during A levels. And then I don't know, for me, I think, yeah, both of those slightly took a hit in the end because I'd gotten so, I think through GCSEs I was so good at like compartmentalizing rowing, and then almost like the less time I had to revise, the better I was at it, because I was, when you have limited time, you just get on with it, don't you? Whereas if you give me 7 hours, I'm going to procrastinate for 6 of them, and then I don't know, maybe do something in the last one. But I think by the time I got to A levels, I don't know, I just found the whole thing like quite exhausting. To I think when you're trying to pick one or the other, or maybe I just couldn't quite decide which one was more important to me, and in the end, I mean, neither like struggled. Well, actually, rowing probably struggled more than the A levels themselves. But I think something else that I want to try and get into more is journaling and like writing down, I can't remember what you call it, but like something you're grateful for every morning or everything. Because I think I'm a bit guilty of not sometimes remembering the good stuff. I'm such a like, what's next? I'm very impatient, and it would be really nice sometimes to slow down. It was one of my bosses said it to me once, and it's always stuck with me. When I was talking to him about, I just had a sort of kind of promotion at work, and I was having a chat with him about an event that was happening the following year, and like whether I'd be involved and like what I could do. And he just said to me, like, don't forget sometimes when you're chasing the shiny thing that you're already holding it. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, it gives me goosebumps still when I say it, because I'm like, that is so true. Like, don't forget to enjoy everything that's happening now in pursuit of something you think might be better. The grass isn't always greener. Often it is, and often you develop with it and you make the grass greener as you go. But I think don't forget everything you should be grateful for right now.
That's so interesting. And I love that phrase as well. When you're chasing the shiny thing, don't forget you're basically holding it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
There was another when I was sort of transitioning from athlete to whatever I am now. Um,
Yeah, what are you?
I don't
Have
really
we
know.
discussed?
I'm just working it out, to be honest. I'm going through, I guess, maybe, a delayed gap year, something like that.
Sounds
Anyway,
fun.
well, it's very creative. We're just sort of doing a little bit of everything at the moment.
Oh,
Um, One of the things as I was like sort of transitioning into, this life that is not structured day to day, there's no, you know, deadlines for like food and hydration and sleep and all of these sort of things. Someone said to me, because I was like very hesitant to let it go. And they were like, if your garden has nothing in, then you can plant whatever you want in it. So, like, if the
yeah.
soil is bare and you uproot everything, you can grow whatever you want, or your life can go in any direction you want it to. But while you hold on to, I don't know, the original plants, a tree, or whatever it is, it's obviously like all hypothetical. But like, while you hold on to those things, you can't redesign everything, and it
Yeah.
can't grow whatever you want because it might be that the old tree is like toxic for all the new plants and stuff like that.
Mm.
So it's scary, but in terms of, you know, making comparisons or making big life choices or whatever, you can grow whatever you want in the new
Yeah.
direction you want to go in.
And I think it can be, or certainly for me, really overwhelming if you think about things in big chunks of time. Like, even there, when you say a whole garden, my brain, the way it works is like, fuck, like what? Where would I start? Like, what plant do I want to go with first? Or do I want to do vegetables? Or maybe I do want a tree. Like, maybe we're going long term. Maybe we're going to have an orchard. And actually, if you go more for like a corner, I'd be like, right, okay, maybe we'll just start here. Like, just one day at a time, like one plant at a time. And then suddenly you've got a whole thriving, back garden. So that would be my other piece of advice to myself, more so than others. It's like, you don't need everything all at once. I think sometimes little things can happen and they can be so good. And you then in hindsight, don't you look back and think, oh, it was so cool that that little thing happened because it led to something big, but I didn't really need the big thing at the time. So
Mm.
yeah,
It's
my
so
garden probably needs a bit of work.
it's so funny chatting to you, and you're like, yeah, my sport hit at like junior level, and then you're like explaining all the things. It's like, no, that is athlete mentality through and
Maybe I am an athlete. We had a joke, me and my friends when I was younger, because I was always so obsessed with the Olympics, was that I would be that person that got the Olympic rings tattooed, even though I'd never been to the Olympics. And then you'd have that horrendous thing where people are like, oh my God, what did you compete in? And I had to be like, oh no, sorry, I didn't. I just really like it. I just think it's really cool. And obviously I didn't do that, and I promise I never would. But that was the joke. And I was like, oh my God, imagine. I'd be like an actual athlete, but I wouldn't really.
you're like, disclaimer, I actually don't have one. It's on my bum
Yeah.
cheek, but
Yeah, exactly.
what is your favorite sporting moment or favorite commentary moment that you've sort of hit so far, do you think? Is there a peak moment or a peak, you know, event that you've been to?
I think doing the women's quadruple sculls at the Olympics in
Um,
Paris, where like that honestly, I guess going back to what we were talking about at the start, is the prime example of when you just cannot prepare for live sport. Because for example, with the other two golds I got to do British wise were the women's lightweight double and the men's eight, where like we said, I think I was fairly confident, barring any disasters, that they would win gold and, reasonably comfortably. And so it was quite nice because with both those crews, you did have enough time, the way the races panned out, that you could do the big like wind to the finish and give them their due.
their moment.
Whereas, yeah, exactly. Whereas with the quad, I mean, it was literally on the line. So there was no time for all that. And it was the first, from memory, was it the first? No, I think the men's quad was the first final, and then the women's was the second, or in certainly with British cruising that we were going big on the BBC. And so to have got to call that race, which was historic in, so many ways because it was Britain's first gold as well, but in that manner, and to have got it right as well, because I called it. So they obviously were watching them on the screen, then they come into our vision and we just see them closing. And I've seen them do it a few times already, as you would have like watched them through the season. That's what they do. So I was like, we cannot call this as the Netherlands gold yet, because I think there's still enough time for them to get there. And then I think I said something like, it's neck and neck. It's going to be, I think I said something like, it's neck and neck. They're coming up to the line. It could be on the line. And then obviously I've watched enough rowing to see the sort of surge at the end. And I said, it's gold. And then to save myself, because then it immediately came up as photo finish on our monitor, I was like, is it? And then I just had this moment of pause where I was like, oh my God, what if it isn't? Because that's, again, like we said, this is the moment that will be replayed on the TV replays and stuff. So you, fingers crossed, you're like, hope I got it right, because otherwise that's never coming out again. And then they got it. And I just like that elation of how they'd done it and the moment of it for me, and to know that I got it right for them as well. And for example, the whole, really emotional, amazing narrative of Lola in that boat with that message she'd had from her dad before he really sadly passed away, where he'd said to her, like, you're basically, well, she'd written like, I'm going to win the Olympics, and then screwed it up and put it in the bin, and then he dug it out and she found it again like years later and all that. Like, that was a story that I'd sort of found from doing loads of research on them that I think we then put into the commentary. And then what was really cool was Matthew Pince and Cass Granger, who were doing the interviews on the bank after, like, put that to her at the end. And then that story went viral because I guess everyone else picked up on that narrative. And it felt so important to me and to Mo, because we talked about it loads. We really prep about how we're going to build these races and think about them, like what storylines we're going to tell within them. And it felt so important that, like, such an amazing emotional moment for someone who has been through so much and has got here and doubted themselves and did it anyway. Like, for that to be the thing that people remembered amongst three other women who'd also been through loads of adversity and different things to have got there, like, that meant so much to me, that I think that's probably the closest I've come to feeling like we got a race spot on. And it had that amazing ending as well. So yeah, that's probably my highlight so far.
Yeah, if nobody's watched that race, that's the GB women's quad winning by, I think the term is a gnat's cock on the finish line of the Paris Olympic 2024 final. It was absolutely amazing. We were in Paris somewhere watching it on a phone, and we were like a bit behind. Obviously the feed was a little bit behind, and then somebody was like further ahead of us. We were watching the triathlon, I think, at the time, but watching the rowing on the phones, and some people started screaming, and we were like, oh my God, are they screaming because of what's happening next? Like, what's happening? Who's won? Like, oh, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That is a very good favorite moment. And I saw the other day that somebody had actually recorded you guys in the commentary box when you were
that was I think that was Camilla Hadlin Horrocks, who does the World Athletics feed. I think I might have shared it actually. I think you're right. She'd sent it to me and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's a year on since that day. But yeah, so that, I mean, it's really cool. Genuinely, everyone should go and watch that.
It's just so lovely how invested everyone is. We'll bring you right back down to earth with a best fuck up moment.
Oh, what to pick? So many good ones. I mean, I think we were actually talking about this just before we started, weren't we? Some of the best are when I've just forgot to press record. And it's like, it's kind of bonkers to me that still in an industry where there's so much advanced tech and it's moved on so much, and AI can like transcribe your entire interview in seconds, and it can upload it so quickly and all this stuff, and it can still be completely scuppered by an idiot like me just not pressing one button to make it happen.
Or me.
Yeah, or you. Didn't want to say it, but yeah, so I've had those moments. Nothing that was like so bad that like it was like a massive guest and we were like, oh fuck, that's awful. There was one where I'd done a really awesome interview with someone. She's called Dawn Harper Nelson. She was Olympic champion in Beijing over the hurdles in athletics. And we did a whole interview, like a good hour and a half, just amazing, about her life story and all that. And then I left my laptop next to an open window in my house and it got nicked and I hadn't made a copy. And so that got lost. And then she messaged me like a few months later and was like, hey, like, why did that interview never go out? I've looked for it. I can't find it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. It's completely my fault. I mean, it's not really. It's the dickhead who jumped through my window and grabbed my laptop. But yeah, that was quite sad because it's like I was so avoidable by just, saving it on Dropbox or something. And then there's been a couple of occasions where I've like said the wrong goal scorers' names and things like that in live, which just never goes down that well. And people always point it out to you, which is great. I don't think I've done anything sackable yet, so that's quite good. I think.
Touch wood.
Touch wood, yeah.
Good. I when I first started the podcast and I was recording again with my friend Harriet, one of my closest friends, and so I was like, we'll start with you and then we'll move on. And my laptop, when it goes to sleep, it stops recording. So we were talking for about 45 minutes and it only recorded like 10 or 15 because I didn't realize that like when the screen went black, that was it. It just stopped.
Oh, no.
So we recorded like the same episode maybe 2 or 3 times, and due to various other like technological blips, I mean by the end of it I had like 2 hours 40 of content that I needed to like crop down into an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I would always say better too much than too little.
That's very true.
Always the mantra. Yeah, we had one recently on our World Service podcast where we basically she was a Olympic champion sailor from Brazil, and she was late to the interview, so it was slightly her fault actually, and she was going through an airport, so we were trying to do an interview while she was going through security, and we thought like, oh, it'd be a really fun like little quirky feature. So there kept being moments where she'd be like telling us about her experience on a like a FaceTime call, and then she'd be like, oh, hang on one sec, and then you'd hear her like pop her phone in a box and you'd hear it beep through security, and she'd be like, right, sorry, as I was saying, blah blah blah, and yeah, it took well over an hour to try and piece all these bits together because she had to keep hanging up on us and then coming back and going through passport control and all that. And then at the end, as we'd said, yeah, hadn't clicked record. It was actually producer Joel's fault, not mine this time. But it was just like, what a waste of time. Like, that was just really, really pointless. And she is the kind of person that she's too busy and too big of a deal to ask her to come back and do it again. So that just, that never materialised. Yeah.
Oh, well.
I'll tell you it was interesting.
That would have been a really good interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just going through passport control, just going through security, just going through all of these other different bits. Or maybe big deal, she just gets ushered straight through. Who knows?
Yeah, not like us lot, eh?
No. I think we've covered advice, but do you have any other, I don't know if I included that actually, do you have a piece of advice for our listeners that sort of changed the game or changed the world for you? We might have already covered it actually, but that's right.
I guess the whole shiny thing was quite like one for me, and just like showing. I get people get in contact about wanting to get into the media industry particularly, and like, oh, I'd love to do something like that when I'm graduated, or even I've had a few ex-athletes get in touch and be like, when I've retired, I'd really like to get into the media. What's the way to do it? And I always say, like, show that you love it now. Don't just leave your sport or your uni career and then tell people that and then tell people that's what you want to do. Like, you have to sort of show it through your actions. And I think more so than ever now, you can do that with social media and, reels and vlogs and podcasts and things like this. If you really love women's sport, for example, why are you not showing me that by if I did one simple search about you, like, why can I not see that in everything you do? Why are you not writing a vlog, doing a vlog about it? Why are you not doing a podcast? Because I think there is maybe a little bit of an attitude that you can sort of wander into media and just jump straight into like doing commentary. And actually, I think you really need to prove why you want to be there. And I think the easiest thing to do is, if it's something you love, like, make it part of your routine and your life. And, you know, if you're at football games, just take a picture and tell people you're there, or do a little roundup, 1 minute, like, what were the best bits of the game, or that sort of stuff. And I just think that really proves that this is something you want to do.
That's good. That's a good bit of good heads up for people wanting to get into the media. I've actually forgotten what I was going to say.
Sounds good though.
Yeah, it does sound good.
Bated breath.
Yeah. What was I going to? Oh, that was one of the questions one of the last two questions that I had was, what do you think women's sport needs more of?
That's a great question. I think one part, certainly for me, I would love to see more of, because I'm slightly geeky on this sort of stuff, is like the scientific research on women's athletes, women's health, all of that sort of stuff. I've done quite a lot around periods and like ACL injuries and things like that, where you still have so little research, because historically they've done research on men because it was way cheaper, because they didn't have to deal with fluctuating hormones through the month. So they would just do a man because their hormones stay the same. And they were like, oh, it's just the easiest test. Like, radically though, weirdly, you can't test periods on men. I don't know why it's taken us this long to figure it out, but and I just think it's fascinating. Like, is that not surely where like the proper heart of sports science should be right now? I just think that's the bit that we don't know anything about. We could learn so much. So I'd love to see more research on that, and just it becoming more and more normalized to talk about those sorts of things, and just continuing to speak about the women's game in like more neutral terms now. And by that I mean, I think what was so cool about the recent Women's Euros was that for the first time, I felt anyway, we were at that space where we were talking about it in that similar way to how we talk about men's, i.e. like, you could criticize them and not be misogynistic, and you could praise them without being patronizing. And I think for ages people were sort of scared of that midpoint with women's sport, and now I really think we're there, and that really excites me. So I want to see more people like talking about women's sport with confidence and authority, and not being scared to, you know, call out maybe a bad performance, you know, not throwing people under the bus, but like being able to say, you know what, if that was a men's race or a men's match, like, we would say that wasn't good enough, and it probably wasn't good enough, but here are the reasons why. And it's really cool that we have that ability now to do that
without was it using overused phrases. It's more of a level playing field.
We love a cliche.
I was so glad you said that earlier, because I was like, that is literally my bugbear when I'm listening to commentary, is phrases that are overused, or people like amping it up, and we've only just started, we're like 1 minute in. So I'm really, really glad that you brought that one up. I was just going to say about developing science for women's sport. I think the stat is, I've seen two stats. One is only 3% of sporting studies are done on female bodies, or 6%. And it sort of differs between 3% or 6%. And I'd just like to say, either way, it's not enough.
Still tiny.
Either way, that's a very low percentage. So I don't really mind which one it is. It's just not enough. And I think that is definitely time for that to change, and for us to start, you know, exploring these different things, and how exciting it will be when we have a bit more knowledge on how to make these things better, and what, you know, shoes, saddles, you know, pitches. I know with the ACL stuff, they've tried training on different football pitches, like AstroTurf.
Yeah, and it's things like stud placement on boots has only ever been designed off the male foot, and they were like, wouldn't it be radical to like look at a female foot and see if that might change weight distribution and where extra support is needed? And also things like culturally, because women haven't been supported from a young age to pursue football, i.e. there haven't been academy setups, and they've not been training to the same standard and the same like the same amount of hours that young boys are. There is also research to be done around the athletes who have maybe just kind of coming towards the end of the career, now, when they were training and younger, they didn't get enough kind of experience and support and structure through their bodies, and that's why maybe they were more susceptible to injuries. Whereas now you got girls' academies, and they are building up that strength from such an early age that might then help them, later down the line have kind of a stronger kind of what would you say, like background and build up into a career.
Resilience.
Resilience. That's a great word. Yeah.
Resilience.
Write that one
Chew
down.
on all those letters.
Yeah,
Resilience.
Resilience.
My final question, what is your weekly soundtrack? Or if you're going to the gym, what are you putting on?
Ooh, mine's so eclectic, and I'm always way behind. I'm actually having a bit of a like renewed indie era at the moment. So the other day I was listening back to like old early Kings of Leon, like the what's it, Youth and Young Manhood, or I can't remember what the album's called. It's the one with Molly Chambers and Red Morning Light. And I was like, this is great music. I love this. This is so good. So yeah, I think I'm back there at the moment. Which I'm quite enjoying. I feel like I'm like 13 again or something. I don't even know when that came out, but my dad like used to play it when I was younger, and I loved it.
Back in your, is it like 2010s? Is that?
Yeah, I think, and like, I think it might be earlier than that. I think I was listening to Franz Ferdinand's first album the other day as well, and I was just like, this is. I always listen to that because that one, this is so nerdy, but the first Franz Ferdinand album came out the summer of the 2004 Athens Olympics, which was my first like proper Olympics that I remember. So I've always now associated that with like really good memories of watching like Kelly Holmes and stuff during that summer. So now I always put that on. I'm now Googling Kings of Leon to try and work out when that album is, which is not great radio listening.
I feel like everyone will want to know now. That'll be like,
Yeah.
when you...
Oh, here we go. 2003. Bloody hell. That was a long time ago. Great album, though. Highly recommend.
Well, that is all of my questions. Yeah. How did you feel being on the other end of it?
Yeah, it's good. I was thinking, though, I'm always like, when I'm interviewing people and they give really long answers, and then I was thinking, like today, I was just like rattling away. I really need to try and rein that in a bit.
No, it was so good. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, not at all.
I thought it was really funny midway through when you started asking me questions. I was like, no, I need to get the reins back.
She's turned the table.
I'm about to lose this one.
I thought you fought back very well.
Oh, thank you. I do my best.
No, you have such a lovely style because you're so you're listening. I think that's the biggest thing you notice with people who are like nervous for an interview is they're not listening to what you're saying. They are just ready to ask a question. It's
supposed to be sort of semi-funny, but like locker room chat, older sister advice conversation, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a nice way of framing it as well. It's just accessible. There's no judgment. It's different topics, and you don't need to be an expert, but you just need to be able to listen, don't you?
Yeah. Or I'm not the expert, but I'll find people that know more about
it. Yeah, exactly.
That's the general idea. But yeah. But thank you. Yeah, thank you very, very, very much.
Oh, not at all.
And I'll cut all of our ums and ahs out and